Welcome back, everyone, to Gooey's Dungeon Dive, the show where I, Gooey, rank all of the dungeons in the Legend of Zelda series. And for this season, I'm joined, as always, by my special Wind Waker correspondent, my friend, Corey Richmond.
It's me. I'm here.
After getting tossed into the Great Sea in our last episode, Link is rescued and awakened by the King of Red Lions. Which is a ship that bears likeness to its name, and he's been watching us for reasons now unknown, and he's able to give us more insight into the mysterious figure we encountered at the end of the Forsaken Fortress, who is none other than Ganon, as he calls him. Here's a little backstory that we finally get on Ganondorf, and of course we already know it from having played Ocarina of Time for this series, or watching the opening of the game, but Link needs to be caught up to speed. King of Red Lions tells us that Ganon cannot be defeated by human hands, but he offers to help guide us to a power that can be wielded against Ganondorf so that we may rescue Errol.
In general, I love King of Red Lions as a character. We're not into the real juicy stuff yet, but I do think it's funny. Little to no explanation. It's just, hey, there's a talking boat and he needs you to get him a sail and he's going to help you out as long as you help him out.
What is funny, and it's embarrassing for the king, we can't explore the Great Sea with him without a sail. He has us go off and look around Windfall Island to see what we can get our hands on, and Windfall Island is a bustling market town that has some more shops, mini games, and a bunch of side quests that we can visit. There's a lot of opportunities from diversions from the main objective, and I think it has a pretty generally charming atmosphere, and it's got that nice little jaunty theme song.
I think it's probably one of my favorite towns in the entire series. It's not too big, it's not too small, but it's jam-packed with stuff to do. It's breathing, it's alive, you got the characters going around on different cycles and stuff, which is obviously a note they took from Majora's Mask, but kind of just made it on a smaller scale. There are definite references to like a Kakariko village somewhat, like you get that in the Windfall Island theme. There's a little bit of a reprisal of that tune. It's not a big central city or anything, but it kind of acts like a pseudo hub for the world of the Wind Waker for the rest of the game. It's a place that you're probably going to come back to at least a few times in your adventure. And it just feels very homey. Every character is doing their own thing, living their own life. It's a very memorable place for me.
There's a lot of like semi-optional stuff you encounter, a lot more side quests that you can get started here, and even some of that stuff that seems optional actually I think becomes more important as the game goes on. So that's really cool. Not only is there like active stuff you can start to participate in that will pay off later, there's stuff you can't even do yet but will matter later.
We would be remiss if we didn't mention Salvatore and Sploosh Kaboom.
Kaboom! Sploosh! Kaboom!
All these little tidbits. You go to the bomb shop and he's a major jerk and you can't buy anything because you're a kid. The killer bees and how you make them respect their teacher, and then she sets up you collecting joy pendants from her. There's just a lot of little things that it's like, it is worth appreciating for sure. But in terms of the main quest, we meet this merchant named Zunari, and he's traveled a great distance to set up shop in town, and he needs some rupees to help finance his new venture here. He will actually sell us the sail we need to set off to our next destination to help him, raise some funds. And he gives us a nice discount if we help rescue Tingle, a strange man he was traveling with who claims to have been falsely imprisoned for theft. So it's good to see Tingle back, because we know his deal from going through these games, and it's got the same sort of backstory as he's this forest fairy. He thinks he's a forest fairy, and he thinks Link is. He's really fascinated and drawn to Link, and I love you free him, and he gives you like that crudely drawn map that's got his island as well as other islands with, I think, fairies that he thinks are like him.
Yeah, and you get a nice little bit of foreshadowing too, because he's kind of just like, oh, you should come check out my special island. You should come visit me there. Once you let him out, you can go in the back and then start crawling through those little maze caves and find the Picto box. Once you get the Picto box, you can go talk to Lenzo, who's the photographer, and like you said, you can initiate a side quest that you can pretty much do the whole thing right there on your first visit. You see a lot of Lenzo's pictures, and then he takes you on as his apprentice, and you have to go around and take a bunch of pictures of different residents of Windfall doing different things, and it helps flesh out that island and especially those characters.
It ties into the main quest, but getting that picto box pushes you in the direction of checking out the other stuff that's going on. It also helps build the world because you have characters who are talking about the other islands. You have the two parents of the Forsaken Fortress girls who were kidnapped. There's just a lot of nice little details here on this island that I like. We gotta head off to our next destination and we kind of get started on the fundamentals of sailing and sea exploration. I think we're pretty limited here with the direction that the wind is blowing, but that kind of makes sense for now.
This is definitely a good little stretch for an introduction to sailing. I think they pretty strategically drop little side things on your path because it's a short path. I think it's only like 2 squares away or something to get to Dragon Roost. First of all, you can pass by Pauperin Isle and go in, and it's basically like an upgraded grotto almost. You can meet the treasure hunter guys, and you get your first hint of these little enemy outposts that are scattered throughout the entire overworld, the entire Great Sea, where you can kind of just park the King of Red Lions and jump out and climb up, and it's just a little enemy fighting minigame almost, and you get a little chest reward.
I feel like there's a little bit of limitation, but I feel like it's because each time you progress, each section, they're trying to give you a new like sort of item that becomes necessary for like exploring the sea, and so it does feel like a little held back from like what the game is compared to like what we end up getting in Breath of the Wild, where they give you, you know, all the runes and almost all the items you need on the Great Plateau and set you off. I think of it because I just feel they feel similar in some ways to me, of having this big world that you can just kind of go anywhere eventually, you know, so there's sort of like a give and take of that. I think they do give you enough little tidbits here to kind of lead you along, you know, but I can sort of see, and I do sort of feel sometimes that I'm like, oh, I just want to get out there and start finding treasure and shooting stuff, you know. That's why I brought up the items. It's like, it's not until you start getting that stuff that it's like you can really do things in a lot of places, you know. So I think there's kind of an active choice to limit it. I think it's a step in a cool direction. That's going to be my, I think, thesis for this game later on. We make our way to Dragon Roost Island, which is the domain of the great dragon Valu? How do you say it?
Valu?
He's the spirit of the skies who rests atop the highest peak of the island, and it's got that classic theme, Dragon Roost theme, that's blasting. Probably one of the best songs in the series. Most people seem to think so.
Definitely one of the most popular.
But the king, he says we gotta go meet with the Rito people that inhabit the island and see how we might be able to request a special jewel from Valu, Din's Pearl. But it's not gonna be easy, of course, it never is. Here right on the island, we actually kind of get a nice, sort of a little tutorial segment on using bombs that I kind of appreciated more this time around. It's just got little things you gotta blow up and make little paths, and I was like, oh, that's neat, that's cute. I never really considered it until this time around, I guess.
I think it's a nice little entry. It's kind of fun that you get there and it's not like, here's the door, come right in. It's like, how do I get up there?
It makes you think like, oh yeah, this isn't necessarily as habitable for people who can't easily fly around.
Before we get up there, King of Red Lions is like, oh, by the way, here's this instrument that can lend you the voice of the gods.
He's just got it in his mouth. Yeah, it's interesting he gives it us now. Like, they could have just saved that for after. You know, I guess he's also got to tell us about how we can use the grappling hook after this. Maybe they don't want to overload us. So, you know, here, we'll teach you how to use the Wind Waker right now. Why not?
And you do get a nice little, if you decide not to go straight in and you go to the other side of the island, you get a nice little cutscene with Zephos, and you learn the wind song.
Yes, you learn the wind song. You learn about his angry brother. It's cool that this shrine you meet him at is placed on this island where they kind of worship the sky and this dragon, and then there's this, you know, Wind Waker shrine thing here. It's all, you know, it all makes sense here on this island, right? So when we get up there, we're reunited with our little Rito postman buddy back from Outset Island, and he gives us a little introduction to the chieftain of the Ritos, who, what do you expect? He's already preoccupied with a situation involving Valu. For an unknown reason, Valu, he's going nuts. He's angry, he's ticked off, and this is preventing the Rito youths from participating in this, like, mature maturity ritual where they're able to get a scale from Valu and grow their wings. The chieftain asks us like to hang on until they resolve this issue before helping out in our quest, and Link's just like, okay, that's fine. Which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Okay, I'll wait.
Quill, who's the name of our Rito postman buddy, he says we should go talk to the chieftain's son, Prince Kamali, who's been affected by this whole situation. He won't seem to speak to anyone, and the chieftain worries he might lose hope as he thinks he's not going to be able to get his wings and that he might just give up entirely. And he thinks Link, this courageous little boy who came all the way, he made it pretty far for someone without wings, as Quill says. Maybe he can inspire him, give him some courage. And Quill, he gives us this delivery bag to hold letters, and then we're directed over to Medley, who's training to be an attendant for Valu. She's supposed to have a letter from the chieftain that we're supposed to give to his son. And here we can kind of poke around, the Rito sort of section of the island a bit more. And we've got, again, some more side quests that we can get sort of started on, not really do much. And there's, the mini games like the mail sorting.
This is the first time we've ever seen the Rito, and I think they're a great addition into the world of Zelda. They slide right in. I'm kind of lukewarm on this as like a town or settlement. It kind of feels like there's not a ton to do. The stuff that you do have to do, just hearing you describe it, you need to get a mailbag so that you can go to Medley so that she can give you a letter from the guy that you just talked to so that you can give it to Komali. So that you can continue. It just kind of feels like a roundabout, okay, let's talk to a few people before we can actually get moving. I will say, the highlight of this whole island for me is the mail sorting game. They flesh out this world so well. I love that you can go back out and talk to this guy who's like, hey, I have a job interview here, but I can't figure out how to get up there. And then if you end up sorting the mail well enough and you leave and you come back, that guy is now working for the mail sorting and he's the new guy. He's like, oh, everyone's talking about how you're such a legendary mail sorter. And I think that section of it is really cool.
Yeah, there's some nice details. I do agree with you. There's a lot of talk to this. You're not really figuring anything out. Not really even encouraged to explore or meet characters. They're just go talk to this person, go talk to this person. I think some of the story they're setting up here is pretty nice. And eventually how we help out Medley is kind of fun to do too.
I also like that before you even get to there, once you talk to Komali and you talk to Medley and you talk to a few people, it's just a good way of fleshing out the characters too, because you find out that Komali's grandma passed away. He's dealing with that and he's a little rough for wear because of that, but so is Medley because she was Medley's teacher, and now Medley's kind of got gigantic shoes to fill without anyone to kind of help her. So it's just a nice way to kind of add depth to these characters that you're kind of forced to talk to.
We can kind of see the connection that Link has to all these sort of characters and going through sort of similar things, So with Kamali, like you said, he's sort of anxious about all that he's going through. He doesn't really appreciate the letter from his father. He doesn't really appreciate Link poking his nose in other people's business, but at the idea that he may be able to help out with this whole situation, he does say he's kind of willing to do whatever in exchange for that. And he's holding there what we can sort of figure out as Din's Pearl, or what we will figure out. And so it's kind of enticing. And then like you mentioned with his grandmother and her training Medley, she is similar to Link in that she is sort of this young unprepared girl who's going to charge headfirst at this situation, which I think is a pretty solid setup, a good character motivation for her, you go out to meet with her because she's like, hey, meet me outside of Dragon Roost and give me a hand. And she feels kind of responsible for this, at least for how Kamali feels. So she's gonna go into Dragon Roost herself.
I like the setup for that because it kind of feels a little bit like the chieftain said, all right, we'll handle this, wait till we're done. And now you got these two kids that are like, we're gonna take this on ourselves. So they're sneaking around, we're gonna sneak in.
We got another little puzzle here too. So this is the kind of stuff I like. It's not complicated, I feel like most people would figure this out, but it's cute where, well, first of all, she can't get up there because the water's all dried up because of Valu raging. So we need to throw her up to the higher ledge to get into Dragon Roost by getting the wind, waiting for the wind to blow just the right way and throwing her up. And she takes off, but she gives us a bottle, which we can see water coming from a spring that's been like blocked up by a boulder that's fallen down, but there's a little residual water. Jump that on a dried up bomb flower and then use that to blow up the rock. And I think that's just like a neat little puzzle in my opinion.
You know, most of these are mechanics that we've seen in other games, you know, using the water or planting things to make certain things grow. You know, that's from the last few 3D games, and then throwing the bomb down to blow up the rock, that's almost like a Goron Vase in Goron City situation, or like Dodongo's Cavern. Using them all in tandem like that, as opposed to one isolated puzzle, I think is really cool. I also do really like that, using the wind, waiting for the wind to go the correct direction so that you can throw Medley up there. I think it's just a great way to showcase kind of how the physics of this game work, you know, like the wind matters. And I also want to say that getting a bottle this early and also as a required item, I think is kind of nice, because aside from that being useful for the rest of the game, I think it kind of ties up a really nice little thread that's been going on since you got to Windfall, which is that you find a potion shop there, and the guy's like, oh, you can get these mysterious potions that help you out, but you need chew jelly and you need a bottle. And you're like, chew jelly and a bottle? I don't have either of those. And then on your way to Dragon Roost, you stop by Pawprint Isle and you see your first choo-choos, and you're like, oh, okay, this is how I get some chew jelly, but where am I gonna find a bottle? By the time you're ready to enter this first dungeon, you get the bottle, and you're like, okay, I have chew jelly, I have a bottle, and it's just kind of connecting the dots for the player to be like, now I have what I need. Whenever I come back there, I can get some potions.
Like I said, there is a lot of that, of like planting the seed for a lot of things that it will pay to remember later. Yeah, up top, we're able to toss a few more bombs. We got some more little bomb challenges, but otherwise, pretty much that leads us right into our next dungeon, which we're going to be talking about next week, and I'm pretty excited to get, you know, into a full-blown dungeon. It should be a pretty good time.
We're starting to get into a little bit, kind of slowly, it's kind of unraveling, but we're starting to get a little bit more taste of what the actual gameplay of the rest of this game is going to be like, especially once we head into the dungeon and we get to experience a full-blown dungeon for the first time. It's kind of interesting because you might not necessarily be thinking as you get to Dragon Roost Island about Errol and needing to save Errol, which is kind of what you're doing this whole thing for. I'm always concerned with what's happening right then, like, oh, look at this new island, look at these new people and their problem.
Well, I guess it's a little different than like Ocarina, because the thing you were invested in is resolved, or sort of resolved right away in the beginning of Ocarina of Time with the Daegu tree. It's like he dies, and then it's like now you're folded into this new quest. In this, you're folded into this new quest, but it's still in the service of trying to rescue Errol, as well as defeat Ganondorf. Well, alright, yeah, I'm pretty excited to get into, like I said, a full-fledged dungeon, so catch us next time. We're going to be talking about Dragon Roost Cavern.